You know, I'm going to get one that says Paramount. I'm going to talk to Barry Josephson, John. I'm going to get the Paramount one for a little snapper. But since I don't, the GOAT, there he is, TB.
There he is, the GOAT.
That's the GOAT. Anybody who watched the game last night knows that that guy truly is the GOAT. I mean.
And what was that, Pete? A minute and how many seconds for 2 touchdowns?
Yeah. And the fact, John, how about this? That's his 44th chance doing that and executing on that. And he's 45. I think he's got one more in him just to match his age. Unbelievable. It really is. I mean, here's a guy who's been going through hell and back, right? I mean, he had all the issues that he had with the crypto world. And then he's got the personal side of his life, and he's got all of that going on. And then, oh, by the way, he plays football. And unreal. I mean, the guy really is the GOAT. I don't know if there's any argument ever from that.
No, I would say you're right, Pete. But, folks, you are joining Pete Najarian, John Najarian, and Jared, our producer, for the Rebels Edge. And every day we start off with 1 minute macro. No, that wasn't 1 minute macro with Tom Brady, the GOAT. But Pete, let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to say crude oil, because crude oil dropped 8.5% in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, it peaked out at 82.20 or something like that, Pete.
Yep.
Traded down today to 75. That's an 8.5% drop. You don't see that very often.
No, I think you're dead on there, John. Just to go on a different route as well, just to add to it, and why we're down. Well, we were down 500 yesterday, give or take, and today we're down 300. But how about the financials and the way they're getting hit, John, and the contraction that they're seeing in deposits, which means how's loan growth going to be? And oh, by the way, as you and I pointed out long ago, and all these guys just don't want to listen, there is an incredible amount of debt out there on credit cards and on houses and all the rest of it. I think the financial side of things, John, is really starting to heat up and get a little bit more scary each and every day. And that upgrade of JP Morgan was ridiculous today. It's overpriced.
Yep. Well, Pete, you brought up the banks, and I'm going to be talking about banking stocks with Charles Payne on Fox Biz this afternoon at 2:30. Eastern time. So really looking forward to that.
Say all right, Charles, for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I will. I love that guy. What a
Great
nice
guy.
man.
Yeah.
All right, Pete, smart guy too. Let's talk about Snap, because people were giving them credit, Pete, for saying, well, if all these advertisers are leaving Twitter, they got to go someplace. They're going to go to Snap. And first of all, I would say no. Second of all, I would say, in all likelihood, Twitter's going to win them back. And that's exactly what they've been doing. Both Amazon and Apple announced today, Pete, that they're coming back. And for that reason, Snap, they might have to call it from now on.
John, a year ago, Snap was a $118 billion market cap. Now it's $17 billion. That gives you a little bit of an idea of just how this thing's been hammered. And why is that? Well, they don't have a whole hell of a lot of growth. As a matter of fact, their earnings is going in the exact opposite way. The last time they reported, it was down 52%. I mean, so this is a company that is just struggling. And did they get a little bit of a life preserver for a moment or two? But then people go right back along with Amazon, along with Apple, and they go back to Twitter. And I think that's what we're seeing happening right now. So it's amazing to me that people really got caught in that trap with Snap in the first place. It's an interesting app. We know what it does, but the reality is they don't really make money, and that's a real problem. They make a little bit. They made 8 cents last quarter. Oh, holy smokes. But let's be honest. This is not Twitter.
Nope. It doesn't have near the engagement, stickiness, or any of that. And I can't really see big advertisers going there, Pete. So Thumbs down. Right. How about this one, Pete? Vivint Smart Home. It does exactly what that name implies, folks. You basically want something in your home that will do security systems, everything from monitoring your home and your air conditioning or heating system, all of that stuff. That's what VVNT does. And apparently, Pete, NRG Energy is going to be gobbling them up. And that's why we're seeing this massive jump in the shares today.
It's going to be interesting, John, if they're able to accomplish what they're looking to do. This is a $3 billion acquisition, by the way, if you include all of the debt and everything else. And so it is interesting. The cross-selling opportunity makes this something that I think if they're able to execute on this, John, it's going to be a great buy. And especially when you consider where this stock was, Vivint, and where it is now. I mean, we're talking about a stock that was 24 bucks a year or so ago, and now it's $9, and they were able to buy it down at those levels. Pretty incredible. I like the buy. I think if the synergies are there, and they obviously think they are, that's a pretty nice chunk. But if they're there, this could really be something in this world in terms of how they can expand. And obviously that would help in margins, I would expect as well.
Yeah, because, the idea, folks, is that, for instance, Texas, I think, is their biggest market, Pete. And if all of a sudden you're able to offer all of these security things to your customers, you got to think a significant number of them will upgrade to that. And that's just more money right into your pocket. So I agree. 2 thumbs up on this one. All right. Let's talk for a second about Signet Jewelers. This thing was 10 bucks a share or less than 2 years ago, Pete. And today, screaming higher. It's up 19%, I think, at mid-session. And Jared and Zales, those are the 2 big brands that most of you would recognize. They raised guidance, Pete, and revenue was 1.6 billion, better than street estimates. And they doubled up on earnings too, Pete, on bottom line profit.
Yesterday, John, I said the 3 words you don't want to hear is lowering our forecast. The 3 words you do want to hear is we're raising our profit forecast. That's what they did. And John, they not only raised that, but let's even look back to last quarter. They absolutely crushed it. They were looking for 32 cents. They delivered 74. That's a double, folks. That's pretty impressive. So I think they seem to be doing everything right. They're in a right position right now to continue on. I'm impressed with what they've been able to accomplish, John. You talked about it. It's up 18% today or more. This is a really, really interesting company. They delivered, and I can't say enough about the quarter. I mean, it's just absolutely impressive. I think this one still has room to the upside. I think this is an area that people are still willing to spend.
Yep. And Pete, the 52-week high was 98. The low was 48. So it's at 68. I'm not going to say that's right in the middle, but I'm going to say that they seem to be doing a lot of things right. And this is their biggest quarter because they're going to have Christmas, Hanukkah, as well as, the lead into Valentine's Day and everything else. That's got to be big for Zales and Signet. So thumbs up on this one. Very nice earnings report. All right. How about App, Pete? APP. You and I probably have never talked about this one, but it's mobile technology and it's known as AppLovin. They have software basically to help people monetize on the internet, machine learning and all that kind of stuff. A new 52-week low today. Trades down under 12 bucks a share.
John, the debt to cash in this one is a minus $2 billion. That's never a good thing. You and I talk about fundamentals all the time. That's really one of the primary, footings that you want to have. They do not have it. You talk about the stock, it was 99, now it's 11 bucks. I mean, that's pretty awful. They also cut full year forecast, guidance, whatever word you want in there. Those are those 3 words again that you don't want to hear. So this is a company, John, that I think is swirling. I don't know how far they actually have to go from here to actually start seeing people go in there and shorting the living tar out of it. But there already are some shorts in this name as well. So they missed their 4th quarter estimates also. There's a lot of different problems that they've got right now, John. This one I would stay away from. Do you think there's an opportunity there? I actually don't. Despite the fact that it's dropped the way it has, I'm not sure exactly, John, where they actually fit in. And that's a problem because people aren't spending in that category right now. And until they do, this is trouble for them.
Well, let me put out one more stat to you, folks. It was $99 a share within the last 52 weeks. It's trading 11 right now. As Pete spoke, it dropped another 30 cents. So I think, Pete, when you're talking about a $4 billion stock right now that was almost 10 times bigger, it was $38 billion valuation. I don't know who put that valuation on it. I don't know who bought it up there, but this one's as bad as any crypto, Pete. You can't find too many stocks that are down, basically trading at 1/10 of their value within the last year. We're not talking a long runway. We're saying within the last year. So yeah, I think this thing just kind of goes away, Pete.
John, the last thing I'll say on that is this, because it's very important, I think, and I know we're going over the time, but when I used to talk about triple and quadruple digit PEs or no PE, this is in that category, and this is exactly what happens. And that's why when you and I had others that were telling us how great some of these 3 digits and 4 digit companies were, we would sit there and say, not for me. This is why.
Yep. And I'll tell you what is for us, though, folks. Pete will be going down to the Naples Wine Fest. Is that what it's called, Pete?
Yeah, it's the Naples Wine Festival, John, but I'm actually, that's actually in January. But last year when I was there, these guys were smart enough to continue to give me a little bit of alcohol. Next thing I know, I'm buying something. And what did we get? We got Kelsey Ballerini, country star. She's going to be out there singing for us tonight. So we're able to redeem it. Should be a lot of fun. There's about 20 or 25 of us, something like that. It should be great. But John, they've raised $250 million over the last 20 years for the children of Collier County. So it's not just about the fun. They have fun, and we all have fun whenever we go. But let me tell you something. People open up their wallets. They did it last year. I mean, there's always times there's bumps in the road financially, but people did open their wallets up again, and they crossed that $20 million mark again last year. So just impressive how much these guys are willing to give.
Yeah, and somebody, Pete, paid 6 figures for, was it a lunch or a dinner with you?
2 years in a row, John. And I'll even give you some of the numbers. I think it was 150 the first year and 180 the next year with a K at the back. So, you know what? Look at this. You and we have lunch all the time. I wonder if we should start charging each other for that.
I couldn't afford you. But that is wonderful, Pete. It's great that you and Lisa, Pete's wife, support these causes because this is not just a charity where they hang another painting in a museum or something like that, folks. Nothing wrong with that. But this is a charity that's actually really helping out people in Collier County and the people that need it the most, quite frankly, in that county. So I applaud you for that, Pete. Fantastic job. All right. My unusual today, Pete, is going to be IGT. Many of you know it as International Game Tech. IGT, it's $24.50. They were buying the January 25 calls. So that means just 50 cents above where the stock is trading. So that's not a big leap. These are going to move a lot like the stock. They won't move dollar for dollar like the stock, but look at how much you had to spend. $1.50 is what these options were purchased for. 10,000 of these options. That's a million share equivalent, folks. So a million share equivalent bought at just 50 cents above where the stock is. So if you wanted to buy a million shares of this stock, it'd cost you $24,500,000. But if you wanted to buy a million share equivalent of this, you could spend as little as $150,000. Now I know most of you aren't spending that kind of money, but $1.50 times 10 would be $1,500. You're controlling 1,000 shares of a $24.50 stock. That's a deal. I had to follow them in there, Pete. These guys make slot machines as well as various progressive machines for lotteries and things.
And with things opening up and everything else, John, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you what, I've got Boeing for my unusual option activity. And What I like here, John, is here's a stock. First of all, I'm not a huge fan of Boeing. I'm going to put that right out there. I'm a bigger fan of Lockheed Martin, a stock that I've owned for a long time. And they're not exactly parallel, but they're very similar in a lot of different ways. So I prefer Lockheed over this name, absolutely. But I look at Boeing. How about this, first of all, for a comparison? For the year to date, Lockheed Martin is up 37%. Boeing, it's down 13%. And that's after a 10% rise in the last month or so. So gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the performance issues that are going on there. And Lockheed Martin certainly does stand out. But stock was trading about 181 today. Early on, this happened about the first hour or so of trade, John. We had a buyer of the 180 puts. As a matter of fact, the buyer of the December 9th, that's Friday, the 180 puts. They paid $1.50 all the way up to $2.60. Now, again, I want to make sure that you understand this. The stock was trading 181. 4,000 of those were bought. Stock actually did creep back up, John. It got up there towards 182, went even a little bit further. Now it's dropping and dropping dramatically to the downside. Those puts are already on the move. But that was the selection I had early on. I liked seeing this because I'm not a huge believer in this company still. They still got to prove a lot to me that they have turned the corner, so to speak. So that's why I think these puts actually make some sense. And it's very, very short term after a 1 month big jump of 10%. Makes some sense to me.
Yep, made sense to me too. And luckily, Pete, I got in on this. Folks, whenever we see put activity, that's activity to the bearish side, to the downside. And like Pete said, stock was up. It was trading, it closed yesterday 185, was trading 180, when 181 or so when Pete saw this activity. And then it kind of lifted back up towards 184, Pete. And now it's trading 178.49. That's one of the reasons folks subscribe to our stuff, is because we have eyes on it. And frequently that means that somebody was putting on a big trade, betting on the downside, and it didn't look good for a few minutes. And for the last hour or two, it's looked great as these puts go in the money, Pete. And they've only got, 3 more days to trade: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Bang.
We'll be in Miami.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that one with the crew in Miami. Folks, let's let Pete take it over on a little bit of the football side of things, Pete.
All right, we're going to hit a little college football, John, and this one's interesting, and again, ties in Deion Sanders to something. But first of all, let's start off with this. The transfer portal, what is it? Well, it's a version of free agency for college football that was created about a year or two ago. And it gives kids the opportunity to jump in the portal and see if there's anywhere else that they'd like to be, and see if that school is willing to grab them. And I'll tell you, John, 3,000 people, 3,000 football players were in the portal last year. I think they're going to shatter that this year, because kids get, ticked off. They want more game time. They want this. They want that. They had a poor season, whatever it is. Maybe they don't like the coach. They want to leave. So it's really interesting. One of the interesting facts, I was looking at it, John, and there's updates that are constantly going. I refresh. Every time I refresh, another 10 or 20 kids go into the portal. So it's going to be a monster year. Bama had 7 go in there yesterday. You know who's grabbing them up right away? Oklahoma has picked up 3 players already in the portal, and it just opened not too terribly long ago, John, where it really started to open up at the end of the season. They got an edge rusher, a defensive tackle out of Notre Dame, and then they got a tight end who was at Oklahoma, went to South Carolina, and now he's back at Oklahoma. Kind of an interesting move there. But here's the interesting part for me. Deion Sanders. We talked about him yesterday. He's the new head football coach at Colorado. John, in his very first meeting with the players on Sunday, I loved his approach. It's a little bit aggressive, but he got up in front of the team, and this is what he said. Get yourselves on the portal and get out of here. I don't like quitters. I don't want quitters. I want you to get out of here and go somewhere else. I want guys who want to play football and want to play football for me here. I don't want people just hanging on. He was really aggressive. A lot of people thought it was offensive. I loved it. I loved his approach, because basically he's saying, you know what? If you want the same old, this is the wrong place to be. And he's starting to put together his staff, John. As a matter of fact, the old Vikings coach, the head football coach, now that was a defensive coordinator for about 30 years in the NFL. is likely going to be his defensive coordinator. They were already talking about that as well. So a lot of things going on there, but I thought you'd enjoy the fact of how he treated him. But do you like that? Is that too aggressive? Should he be a little bit more of a hugger?
Nope, because football's not a hugging sport. But you make friendships for life. And I think, Pete, this is an awful lot like, when you and I were in Dallas this year and we were down there with those Navy SEALs, every day those guys are sitting there, running through the surf, and it's cold and their boots are wet. And, the drill instructor's sitting there with a hot cup of coffee, and he goes, "Who wants some? Who wants to quit? Just ring that bell. All you got to do is just ring that bell." And I'm not trying to be so macho, Pete, that I'm saying that, I'd make it through there easy. I don't know that. But what I do know is challenging people like that, challenging them to quit, just saying, all you got to do is ring that bell and it's over. You get a nice hot meal. You get a hot shower, or you're going to suffer out here for the next week. Do you really want that bad? Wouldn't you like to go back to your girlfriend? And they put all this in their heads because they want to see how mentally tough they are, not just physically tough, because most of them quit because of mental toughness issues, Pete. And I think the same is true with a winning college football team. I've heard Saban say it. I've heard him say, there's a different level of guy that I'm looking for here. I'm not looking for these other guys. And I don't know if he would take a guy back like you described, Pete, the tight end that went back to Oklahoma. I don't know if he'd take a guy back that, went somewhere else and then came back. But if that kid was willing to bleed, Bama, I think he would take him back. But otherwise, no. Once a guy quits, he's a quitter. And I'm not saying people in the portal are quitters. Like you said, Pete, better opportunity. I'm going to go someplace where they just got a quarterback that just moved out. I'm going to go there and play because I think I'm the next Trevor Lawrence. And by the way, Trevor Lawrence was a transfer from Ohio State, right, Pete?
Yeah, there's a lot of transfers out there, John, that did do well when they moved on. We've seen it with a lot of guys. Burrow went from Ohio State down to LSU.
That's the one I'm thinking of. That's the one I'm thinking of, Pete Burrow.
And all he did, John, was set records that are probably going to be very difficult to beat. So he did the right thing. I totally agree with you, by the way. Different head coach, though, at Oklahoma now than before. Lincoln Riley went off to USC, who was pretty active. Last year, they had 4 guys in the top 28 in terms of ranking that they got to USC. So they did pretty well in the portal. Next, John, we got something kind of fun. So in 2024, the 2024-25 season, we start with the playoffs that are going to be 12 teams, not 4 teams. So this year, our 4 teams are Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and Ohio State. But, John, if this were a year with 12, here's the question for you. Who do you think could probably disrupt it the most and maybe have the best opportunity to win? I've got a little list in front of me here. You've got Tennessee, but they lost their quarterback. That hurts them. They also got crushed in one of their games. Clemson, 11-2. They look pretty good. They also lost to South Carolina, a team that crushed Tennessee by 1 point. You've got Utah that was 10-3. They just got done beating USC. Second time this year. You've got K-State, who had a heck of a year, John, and their losses were very respectable, including the one to Tulane, who was an 11-2 football team this year. Damn good. You've got Penn State, the only teams they lost to, Ohio State and Michigan, who are already in the playoff. Then you've got Washington, who did have a bad loss against Arizona State, but the one I left for me in the last one, Bama. I think Bama deserves to be in. Here's why. They go to Tennessee on the road, Rocky Top. Everything was working for them. Their quarterback was healthy as a horse. The receiver was unbelievable. They lost by 3 points at the very end of the game. Their other loss was to a really good LSU team. I know they have losses, but a really good LSU team and a 2-point conversion to win it, which was a gutsy move by the coach, and you got to love it. But that's what they lost. I think Bama, if they were in there, John, they might actually win the whole thing. What do you think?
I think Bama would be my pick, Pete. I think the team that people would least like to play are these two. I think nobody would want to play Utah after they saw the physicality, I love that term,
Oh God,
that
I
they
hate
showed
that.
that they showed against USC. And I think also K-State, Pete. Those two teams are physical.
Mhm.
They've got big road graders up front. Both teams do. Utah, of course, has all those semi-Mormon. Some of them are Mormon, some of them aren't, but a lot of Pacific Islanders that are big, tough dudes. Think of The Rock, except
Yeah.
think about The Rock with legs like that, because that's what those guys, those Samoans and so forth, that's what they look like. And nobody wants to get in front of those guys. I think both those two teams, Pete, really, really strong teams. K-State and Utah would be two teams nobody wants to play.
I agree. I agree with you. Yep. It should be fun, but that's a ways out still. And I still kind of like 4. I think you get the right 4 when you get down to 4. I think it tends to be the right 4. I think this year it's the right 4, but none of them want to play Alabama. I can guarantee you that.
No, I'm sure. Well, folks, as always, we appreciate you dialing in. Remember, you can always catch us live on marketrebellion.com/edge. We also stream live on Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, and we'll have a new announcement. I know I keep saying it, but we're this close to making that announcement for probably the biggest amount of viewers out there, not just in financial news, but in news, period. These guys are huge, and Pete and I will be making an announcement soon about that. So with that said, thank you for tuning in. Please join us again tomorrow, 1 p.m. Eastern Time for the Rebel's Edge.